Hello and welcome back. Recruiting Report on a Monday. Kansas week getting underway. We will talk to players from the team side of things on Monday night, and then obviously we'll have the Tuesday Brent Venables press conference leading into what will be a Tuesday practice report. But welcome back to the Soonerscoop.com YouTube page. Eddie Radosevich, George Stoya here in studio. Josh McCuistion with just an unbelievably great shirt today as we support our brothers and sisters out on the West Coast. Josh, how are we?
Good, guys. Just want to support good football. That's what I'm all about, and you guys know me.
Well,
so
they need all the help they can get over there.
I was going to say, if it's up to me, just offer Alex Grinch and Lincoln Riley extensions. I think what they're doing out there in Los Angeles is completely appropriate and something that we're comfortable to. And we, offer our best to the likes of some of the great alums of USC, whether it be a Matt Leinart, who is one of my favorite follows on Twitter, as well as somebody who, by law is innocent in O.J. Simpson. So it is a recruiting report, though, and I'm sure that everybody is now more than involved. Josh, we talked about this last week when you joined us on Friday afternoon. We had a little bit of an impromptu recruiting report with the news that Oklahoma had gotten another commitment on the defensive side of the football in the 2024 class in Devon Jordan out of Tulsa, or Union High School up in Tulsa. That was on the heels of Michael Boganowski's commitment on Thursday. But Thursday evening, you did go see Jonah Williams, the Galveston ball safety linebacker, defensive Mr. Everything. And I think that we kind of hinted at it on Thursday when talking about Jonah, but my God, that's a dude.
That's a guy, and Eddie, I talk to people about this stuff all the time. Like, there are lots of good players, and they're all over the country.
Yeah.
Oklahoma has plenty of them. There's guys like this that you're like, you don't find that guy everywhere. Like that guy doesn't just exist in every place on earth. And Jonah is a guy, like you said, I don't care if you like him at linebacker. I don't care if you like him at safety. You want that guy on your roster and let the rest of it work itself out. He is extremely talented. And unlike a lot of guys, I see a lot of big, fast, athletic guys. It's kind of the job. But you don't always see guys who, even when a team is going away from them, trying to keep them out of the game as much as possible, they find a way to make plays. I mean, he blocks a field goal and returns it for a touchdown. I mean, like, he was making an impact in every single phase of the game.
Josh, is he a guy that you could see maybe playing the Cheetah position if he's kind of that hybrid linebacker safety? I mean, he's listed at 6'3", 200 here. That would kind of fit what they're looking for, I think.
Yeah, that's what it makes sense to me. And you play this out a little bit where Eddie, mentioned us doing the Boganowski thing on Friday. You put Boganowski and Williams as your two cheetahs. Those guys are, that's really athletic. That's really interesting in what you can do with those two guys. And again, they either one could grow into a true linebacker. That's what you love about these kind of guys that are just great football players. Like, it's not we got to find somewhere to put them. Let's put them over there. Like, they've got to get on the field. Let's figure out how we're going to do it. And you get to be creative and kind of go with whatever may suit them best. So Jonah Williams, like I said, you just watch him and moving around and his athleticism. He's not normal. And what was interesting to me is this was my first time to watch him in a game. I've seen tape. I've seen him in some camp settings, some 7-on-7 stuff, but I'd never seen him in a game. And he's such an incredibly nice kid off the field that I kind of thought, well, maybe he'll be a little soft. No, there's none of that. Like, he's very physical. He lets people know when he's there. He's got some attitude and some edge to the way he plays.
I should have said before we began, too, we're going to be talking about a number of 2025 guys, and that is what Jonah is. Just in terms of overall recruitment, and you can see the interview that Josh did with Jonah on Soonerscoop.com's editorial YouTube page. It's rather early for him, obviously, but at the same time, I would imagine the list of suitors for his services is kind of a who's who list. Who do you think will be some of the teams that, Oklahoma obviously has centered themselves in a good position for him? Who are some of the other schools that, might be in the conversation?
Yeah, he was going to be at Oklahoma this weekend. He elected to pick a slightly different game and went up to see Ohio State and Penn State. So it kind of tells you when you're getting to go to those kind of games, those, when those schools are trying to really only bring their premier guys, that tells you where he is. Jonah Williams is a priority for Ohio State, Texas, Alabama. I mean, you really name it. He can go anywhere he wants to go. He is a big time prospect. I think Oklahoma's in great shape. I think he's really impressed them. And what was interesting is when I'm talking to Jonah, I said, well, because we had referenced him maybe going to Oklahoma again this weekend because he and I had discussed that as a possibility. And he goes, I've just been to Oklahoma so many times. I got to go see some other stuff. And so that's never a bad thing. When a guy's like, I've been there a lot, I've got to, kind of branch out a little bit. So I take that as a good sign. I think, again, and in the interview you're talking about, Eddie, we talked about Brandon Hall and the relationship he has there. I think you're going to see, obviously, A&M is going to be involved. They do a really good job in the Houston area, especially under the Jimbo Fisher regime. Maybe that changes. We'll see how that goes going forward. But and obviously Texas, like I said, I mean, it's a who's who. LSU will be involved. I mean, he's going to every school that you could want an offer from. He'll have that opportunity.
It doesn't sound like he's making a decision anytime soon. Then I would assume.
No, I don't think so. I don't think he's in any hurry. Like I said, very, very even demeanor, kind of calm kid, not going to be someone that I think gets swept up in the moment and gets overly emotional about something. I think he'll take his time. Now, if you said he was in the boat for somebody like by June 1st next year, I could buy that. I think that's very plausible. And I know that seems like the way recruiting goes, that seems so obvious. But when you're talking about a top 25, top 30 guy in the country, we all know he could wait till signing day and everybody's going to wait for him. So I don't think he is one of those guys that wants to drag it out, but I definitely don't think he's in any hurry.
We talked about this a little bit with the Michael Boganowski commitment. And, just in terms of Oklahoma safeties coach, Brandon Hall is an underrated recruiter on this staff. It seems like that was a guy, his name didn't come up a lot, even when he was hired at Oklahoma, but it seems like he is really starting to make not just inroads, but really good relationships with a bunch of guys. And then when you see how Oklahoma safeties are performing, whether it be Billy Bowman or, Peyton Bowen has flashed as a freshman, somebody that, Brandon Hall played a major role in his recruitment. It seems like that thing is starting to become something maybe we're going to have to talk about even more here moving forward.
Yeah. And I would say one of the things I like most about him is the guys he targets. Obviously, this is what you want to do. The guys he starts with, we talked on Friday, Eddie. Michael Boganowski was a very big recruit for Oklahoma. Damn the rankings. That doesn't matter. He was a guy they liked a lot. And to go out and get him close with all that you had to fight through with Kansas State, that's obviously a huge win for Oklahoma. But you like that he identifies who he likes and who there's not a lot of wasted time. We've seen that in the past at times with certain staffs that would struggle to realize they weren't going to get a guy or focus on the wrong guy, however you want to look at it. And I think you see that not happening here. And so I think he does a really good job with that. He really develops nice relationships. I think it's very much in the Brent Venables model. We're going to be relational, not transactional. And that's something Brandon Hall believes in and does a good job knowing, mom, dad, coaches, aunts, uncles, whoever he needs to have that relationship with. He does a good job with it. And I think as time goes on over the next year or two, and as we watch probably Peyton Bowen kind of emerge into the stardom we all expect, I think maybe even nationally he'll start to get some of the notoriety he deserves.
No doubt about it. On Friday, moving to the offensive line, and I told you when you sit back the highlights, it took me a couple minutes to get through them, and then I went, oh my God, there's two of these guys. And we're talking about offensive tackles from Bridgeland High School there in Cypress, Texas. A pair of 2025 guys, too, and Jonte Newman and Ryan Foji. Let's start with Jonte Newman. Obviously, you just turn on the tape. There is a ton to like with the two bookends from Bridgeland High School.
Yeah, and, what's interesting is that they're both, very similar body types, about 6'5", 285, 290. Newman's a little heavier. Foji's probably more like 270 at this point, but Newman is the more physical guy, a little bit more advanced, I would say. And largely, I think some of that's because of physicality. He can do a little bit more because he's a little heavier in his base and things like that. But with Newman, you just get a guy that very physical in the run game. We saw him at camp, Eddie, and he was super impressive up there. I mean, here you got him finishing guys and blocks, and just not at any point a dirty player, but is more than willing to mix it up a little bit. With Ryan Foji, it's a little bit of a different situation where he is extremely athletic. He camped at OU as well, but I can't say I got to watch him as much as I wanted to. He moves, or watching him pull. I mean, guys, that's I hate to say like some of the like the Tyler Guytons and the Lane Johnsons, but that's
sure
that's in the conversation. Like I hate dropping that because it's tremendously unfair. But he moves and he's so light-footed and he really slides. You'll watch him here. I mean, like, just look at that knee bend and how natural he is with it. Like, as he gets bigger and stronger and fills out, I think there is a avenue where Ryan Foji is one of the better offensive tackles to come out of what is an extremely good offensive tackle class in 2025.
Did both these guys you mentioned they camped at OU? Was that the day that we were all down there and we were like, oh, both those guys go to the same school? Do you guys remember that? Them walking off the field in the summer, and we're like, wow, I can't believe they both go to the same school.
And honestly, I saw Foji, and I knew Newman. Like, I knew he was going to be there. He and I had already been in contact. I was pretty confident he would pick up his OU offer while he was there. I didn't know much about Foji, and I honestly took his mugshot in the indoor at Everest because I just was like, well, if he develops into something, and then like, I want to say it was early August, and then kind of out of left field, Bill just offers him. And you were like, okay. Well, since then, Nebraska, Texas Tech, I mean, he's picked up multiple offers in the interim. And again, like I said, I don't want to downplay Newman at all. It was more of Newman was what I expected him to be. I think he is probably a top 20 offensive tackle in the country. Very good. Has the kind of frame that I think could slide into guard. I don't think it's required by any stretch. I think he can play tackle. But if it worked out better and your best five was having him at guard, I think that can happen. Foji's a tackle all day, but there is a lot of upside there. Now, he's going to need time. It's kind of like the Logan Howland thing where he's going to probably arrive on a college campus at 280 pounds. He's going to need a year or two to put the weight on, to get his strength where it needs to be. But, guys, people don't have feet like that. That's not normal. And with both of those guys, I mean, those are Power 5. If they sign somewhere that hasn't truly competed for a national title in the last 20 years, I'd be very surprised.
Just looking at both of them, obviously Bill Venables building a good relationship. Both of their interviews that you did with them on Friday night are up on Soonerscoop.com's editorial page. Just in terms of, I know it's rather early for 2025 guys, but just getting them back to campus, things like that, it wouldn't seem that neither of these guys are very close to making any types of decision, let alone, top 20, top 15s, top 10s, things like that, right?
Yeah. Now, I will say in that interview, Newman, he really caught me off guard because I went in with much the same mindset as you have, Eddie, is that, these guys are a ways off. And the funniest thing about this was I wasn't supposed to be there. I was supposed to be in another game. Sure. And due to some credentialing rules, I couldn't get there. So I went to this one kind of at the last second. And as I'm talking to Jonte Newman, who, like I said, I mean, he's got A&M offers, Texas. I mean, he's another guy that's going to have a lot of opportunities and can go about anywhere. He says something like, OU is definitely in my top 3, probably my top 1. And you're like, I think you just said OU's your leader. Like I'm not a wordsmith by any stretch of the imagination, but pretty sure that means they're your top school. And, and he didn't hesitate. And both he and Foji talked about, you want to go to the NFL, you go to Oklahoma. Like that was literally a quote,
yeah,
I believe, from both of them. And so you're like, okay. And then you think about, Foji really hasn't gone anywhere yet. They were both at the U of H Texas game on the weekend, which I think probably comes out a net positive for OU. But the only games that Newman has been to is OU Texas, and I believe it was one of the OU home games. I think it was SMU, but I'm not sure. It was either SMU or Arkansas State. He was there very early in the year. So until this weekend, every game he'd seen this season involved Oklahoma and was an Oklahoma win. That seems to bode well And then when you add that to what we've talked about with guys like Michael Fasusi and Lamont Rogers, 2025 offensive line has a chance to be that group that can kind of get that offensive line room kind of back on track and maybe start developing not just depth, but really quality depth.
Josh, I was just about to ask you, because the 2024 class offensive line, it seems like it's starting to come together, and maybe we'll get into that in a little bit, but how crucial is it that Bill Bedenbaugh lands a good group? And is it, I know we've talked about this before, maybe the 2024 offensive line class in general, just there wasn't as many talented players out there. Sounds like 2025, there's a lot of talent out there.
Yeah, I think that is absolutely fair. 2024 offensive line, and I'm talking nationwide, it's one of the worst I've ever seen. And it's not to say there's not good players out there and that Oklahoma hasn't found some of them. I'm just saying a guy that would normally be a top 20 offensive tackle in the country is like a top 5 offensive tackle in the country. It's just not what we're used to seeing. Now, it feels like 2025 is trying to make it all back up in 1 year because – again, there's 3, 4. I mean, there's like 6 guys in the Dallas area that have major offers already. And then you add in Newman, you add in Tyler Thomas at Dickinson, and then Ryan Foji. I mean, you're talking about 8, 9 guys just in the state of Texas for Oklahoma and everybody else to battle for. It feels a lot like 2024 defensive line did, where you had Danny Okoye, you had David Stone, you had Nigel Smith, you had all these guys right in your recruiting footprint that were there to be had, and Oklahoma did a nice job cleaning up with a lot of those guys. Now, on the offensive line, Bedenbaugh's got to do the same thing. You have to. You can't miss out on this kind of talent. Now, you're not going to get all those guys. Don't have any illusions. Even the guys where I'm saying, OU's in great shape. If you land 2 of Newman, Rogers, Foji, Fasusi, and Ty Haywood, that's really good. That's really good because you're recruiting against the Alabamas, the A&Ms, the LSUs. Everybody that matters are going to be in on those guys. So if you hit 40% on those 5, that's great. And so it's just, you got to have a reasonable expectation, but at the same time, you can't go over 5. That can't happen. You don't have enough of these kind of talents around to miss out on that many.
Seems like that is very positive news on the Oklahoma recruiting front on the offensive line. Just moving back to Thursday, I went out in what might be the game of the year in the state of Oklahoma, 5A. It was a battle of the 2 unbeaten, 7-0 Carl Albert versus 7-0 Guthrie. And I think that the Carl Albert prowess has been well documented here on this Soonerscoop.com YouTube channel, just in terms of what they have, starting with number 9 right there in the middle, Kevin Sperry, the Oklahoma 2025 quarterback commitment, sharing a backfield with the 2024 Oklahoma running back commitment, and Xavier Robinson, and then a host of guys, whether it be a Trinae Washington in the 2025 group, and Tristan Haynes as well. Josh, I'll just start here. It was one of the best games of the year. Kevin Sperry ended up leading Carl Albert into a come-from-behind victory to stay unbeaten, scoring with 41 seconds left, led engineered a touchdown drive, took over. I think that Guthrie scored with about 4 minutes left, and then they were able to kind of eat up a bunch of clock and score with 41 seconds for the win. I think that it's always interesting, too, because we've started to know Kevin Sperry just in terms of what he did over the summer, and I think that's been well documented, showing up to every single Brent Venables football camp session and actually participating in all of them. Thursday night, I thought it was a little bit different. After the game, he told me he had a grade 1 AC sprain in his non-throwing shoulder, but he got battered on Thursday night and just got up every single time. And, I don't know how much this, tells about the kid, but I think that there's one thing that you can say about him, and he's really, really tough to play through that. And, going into a new school and leading Carl Albert the way that he does, it'd be a lot of fun if these teams got back together at some point in the Oklahoma State playoffs. As you see Xavier Robinson run over a guy, it was an incredible game, an incredible performance, and it's going to be a lot of fun here moving forward to see what this Carl Albert team can do down the stretch.
Guys, at what point is Kevin Sperry going to fail a test?
I know.
When is that going to happen? Whether it's the mental makeup you want to talk about, the toughness that you're talking about there, Eddie, because, people that'll say, it was Guthrie, and they don't know any of the players, and Carl Albert's got all these guys. Guys, I was talking to a coaching buddy of mine who is very familiar with both of these teams, and he was like, BB at Guthrie, that dude, all he does is produce just dogs. Like that Guthrie is nasty and physical, and they're going to fight you for every yard. And that is just the way they play football. They got beat by an extremely talented team. And for those that don't follow Oklahoma high school football, guys, this was game 8, and Guthrie gave up their first touchdown in the second quarter, Eddie?
Yes. Incredible.
I'm sorry, I don't mean the game. I mean, that was the first touchdown they have surrendered this year.
They're really physical up front. I think that it took Carl Albert a minute. I think to be completely honest, they got hit in the mouth a couple times early in that game. And, as Carl Albert usually does, they responded, as you see Tristan Haynes there. This was, I believe, coming up is going to be the touchdown from Kevin Sperry to Marcus James. Let's stay there. Marcus James, Josh, making it his announcement on Thursday, November 2nd. Number 45 rated linebacker in the country. I think that another one of the 2025 products out of Midwest City there at Carl Albert High School. A really good player. If he wanted to play offense at some point at the next level, he probably could. But Oklahoma has him on the defensive side of the ball, correct?
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, Eddie. When I saw him at McGinnis as a sophomore, I thought he was a tight end. I thought that's what he would end up as, kind of a tight end H-back kind of guy. But when we saw him this spring, you're like, man, that would be wasted for a guy that can move like that and as long as he is. He is still very raw. We saw him at summer camp and getting to watch him go through stuff with Ted Roof and James Skalski and the whole crew. You're like, okay, he's still figuring this out. He's still very much kind of just a duckling out there. Kind of like he looks a little awkward at times, but again, he's so long. Like you're just like, I don't know what you're going to be yet. I don't know where it fits, but when you can run like he can, and he's plenty willing to be physical. And I think, you talk about Carl Albert and McGinnis is much the same way. Those are tough teams, man. Like there's nothing soft about those guys. This isn't, I think sometimes, especially with McGinnis, there's an expectation like, oh, it's a private school kid. No, man, those kids are tough. Like they play hard football. And obviously at Carl Albert, it's just good on good every day in practice. And I think Marcus James is going to be much better for it. I really like where Oklahoma is there. Put out his top 5 about a week ago following a visit to A&M. But Eddie, I mean, you were there when we did the interview with him at Carl Albert in the spring. I think we both walked away saying, I think you'd have to mess that up for it not to be Oklahoma in the end.
100%. And that top 5 that you mentioned, Josh, Texas A&M, Utah, TCU, Arkansas, and Oklahoma. And again, that announcement will be coming up here in about, 2 weeks' time on November 2nd, 6:30, a Thursday, I believe, that he will be making his announcement. And I know that George is probably biting his tongue as you sing the praises of Bishop McGinnis. I think that's just the Bishop Kelly in him.
It should be noted that Bishop Kelly won that game this year, so no big deal.
We will still be donating to the Archdiocese of Oklahoma City. I apologize, George.
Not me. Archdiocese of Tulsa.
That's fair. That's fair. Tristan Haynes, another 2025 cornerback out of Carl Albert. We talked about him a little bit before we got going here, Josh. Just in terms of, I know Sam Spiegelman's done a little bit of reporting on this coming out of the other side of, the weekend that was down here in Norman. It seems like Oklahoma's positioned themselves really well.
Yeah, and this is a guy, when Oklahoma made some initial offers there at Carl Albert. Now, we've talked about it a lot on this pod. There's a lot of connection between the Carl Albert staff and Oklahoma. Mike Dunn, Carl Albert's head coach, is longtime friends with Jeff Lebby, obviously Oklahoma's offensive coordinator. So they go way back. And again, I just think there's a lot of, goodwill between those two staffs. When Oklahoma offered Tristan Haynes, my impression talking to several people was that it was, this guy is so talented and could be so good, there's no way we can't offer him. I don't think that they felt that not Oklahoma per se, but I think there was a question of, has he done enough on tape yet to be that guy? Watching some of the stuff I've seen, watching how well he's doing his junior year, I know he had the week before Guthrie, I think he had like 3 or 4 touchdown catches for Carl Albert. He's had a really nice year. But this is a guy, Eddie, you just saw him, and he's 6 foot, 190, can run for days. He is a prototypical corner. And like I said, I mean, he shows some ball skills with what he does on offense for Carl Albert. He's a very, very good deep threat for them. And like you mentioned, Sam Spiegelman, one of our buddies at On3, guy we've known for a long time, put in a forecast, not a forecast. Golly, I can't ever get it right.
It's going to take a minute.
Put in a prediction. Yeah. If you feel like it should be there by now, put in a prediction for Oklahoma for Tristan Haynes. And I think I spoke to Sam a little bit last night. I'm pretty much in the same spot and have thought about putting that one in for a little while. But my question always was, where did Oklahoma kind of see him in the hierarchy of, their cornerback recruiting? I think it's a pretty good sign that they're willing to make that push. I think it says they see him taking that step they were hoping he would take. They're starting to see all those physical tools start to show up on the tape.
Perhaps it's just the numbers and perhaps a little bit added emphasis on the color of the uniform. Is there a little Stan Von Taylor there?
There's something to that. I would say Stan Von was probably a little bit more fluid, but not quite as long or as physical as Tristan is. And but no, I mean, I hear what you're saying. Like there is something to it. I don't know that I have a comp for Tristan that I love right now. But again, this is, we talked about it on Friday, Eddie, that we've seen Oklahoma go away maybe a little bit from some in this 2024 class of, we got to have the big corner that does all the measurables. Tristan Haynes is what you want walking off the bus at corner like that. He looks the part. He is that dude. And I don't want anybody to misunderstand. Like, it was always kind of thought he would start to make this step, but you just got to see it. I mean, like, you can believe in it all you want, but I think everybody and, everybody around him wanted to see him kind of make that next move. And I thought that it was a good sign that against a team like Guthrie that does want to mix it up, does want to be physical, that he made some plays. I mean, that he did some good things for that Carl Albert team. It said something for him kind of being more than just, he's incredibly gifted. He's a football player.
I saw him back in the summer at that Sean Cooper, what was that, the C3 or whatever.
C3 combine type
C4
thing.
C4 combine, whatever it was. And I remember just being like, man, that guy's got some long arms. That's what they're looking for at corner. So he fits that. Josh, what I want to know is, how many Carl Albert guys are they going to end up with? I mean, you talk about Xavier Robinson, obviously in the 2024 class. We talked about Kevin Sperry already committed. We're talking about Haynes, Marcus James, Trey Washington. I mean, what's the ceiling here of how many Carl Albert guys they could end up taking on this particular team?
If you told me they got all five, I'm not going to be shocked about it. Yeah. I really think it would come down. I think the question is probably Trey Washington, and that's not a knock on him at all, because seeing him this spring, I was more impressed with him than I expected to be. I kind of thought he was a tight end that just didn't want to play tight end, but you watch him move, he's really smooth and natural. I still think maybe he could grow into like kind of that flex tight end. I don't think he's ever an inline guy or anything like that, but he's the question mark. But I mean, golly, you look at it and it's not as if you're saying, well, they're kind of taking a flyer on that guy. Like, they're all dudes that check the boxes. I mean, there's a reason we've been so excited about Carl Albert and what they are, because there's just dudes all over that roster. And we don't even talk about some of the guys they've got that are, probably group of 5 type players that have a chance to be those kind of guys. Cause I know that's not what everybody wants to hear about, but they've got guys all over the place, and they're all, like I said, in that Guthrie game, you always like to see who will answer the bell. Who are the guys that can, when it's kind of down and you're having a moment where, for those that don't know, Guthrie was up 14-0 in this game. Like they had the edge early on, and Xavier Robinson runs for about 100 yards. Kevin Sperry makes some big throws down the stretch. Like we talked about, was hurt while he's doing it. Marcus James has, I believe, the game-winning catch. And then, Tristan Haynes, we got Trey Washington right there making a play. So these are good football players that are also just crazy athletes. I mean, and that's why this year at Carl Albert was going to be just nuts, because we know Carl Albert produces nothing but good football players, but now you've got all these athletes that we're not used to Carl Albert having.
No doubt about it. Coach Dunn's got a pretty good group over there at Carl Albert as they look to defend their 5A state title crown. Back to Norman. Big weekend, obviously, with the Central Florida game. Just kind of wrapping up everything that we had talked about on Friday. The Grant Bricks stuff never really officially is out there. We still await his announcement or expected announcement, and commitment to possibly Oklahoma. That's been well documented. Eddie Luis Pierre did not make it to Norman on Saturday. Is that a concerning item coming out of the weekend for you, Josh?
It is for me to a point, because it felt like, okay, it's finally all come together. Eddie is going to be at Oklahoma. Like that's all going to work out. Then when he doesn't make it and you're hearing all these rumors of all these other schools, and I don't know, like part of me is like, well, if he comes to that game and watches UCF fight OU tooth and nail, does that make it a bigger impact? Because I think there are people around him that would rather him stay close to home. And I know there's a lot of belief, kind of in the, we'll go a little sidebar here, that his older brother that I mentioned on Friday, Richard Goriage, that went to Florida, played there for a while and is now in the NFL. There's a lot of belief that he wanted to go to Auburn, but his mother wanted him closer to home, and he went to Florida because of it. So I think that's always been the concern, is could he get out of the state of Florida? So then when it was kind of felt like the moment was there and it was time to step up to the plate, he didn't do it. And you just wonder, like, maybe it's meaningful, maybe it's not. I don't think there's any way to color it as a good thing, but it feels a little like an opportunity missed. Now, obviously, Oklahoma is not going to give up or anything like that, and I still think they're the favorite to be chosen right now. But it's an interesting curveball that you didn't foresee.
Who are the other schools, Josh, in that race?
I would say, again, there's been a lot of Oregon talk. With what I'm just talking about, it's kind of yeah, exactly. That's why you're like, I don't know if I can believe that one. Oklahoma has always felt like that was the hang up, was going to be too far. So you're going to add, double the trip. I don't know about that. And then UCF, obviously they've got a lot of connection there. He's right there in the area. Just, an hour from his home in Tampa, or, there's been Miami talk that has come up more and more as of late. And we know Mario Cristobal does a great job with recruiting offensive linemen. I mean, whatever other flaws you want to talk about, the dude can recruit and develop offensive linemen. So, that'll be kind of an interesting one to watch. I don't know how involved they are at this moment, but that door could open. So we'll watch and see what happens there. But yeah, if you can finish off with Eddie Pierre-Louis and Grant Bricks, and then, you see what happens with Jordan Seaton, who I still think will take an official visit later in the year, then you really might have something. That starts to look like a pretty good offensive line class at that point. But there's a lot of ifs in there, so we'll have to see how these things play out.
A player that did make it in, and this time was on his own dime, I believe, is Reggie Powers, the Centerville, Ohio safety, previously committed to Michigan State, and then with the Mel Tucker news, decommitted. It seems like Oklahoma, anytime that you can get a guy coming in on his own dime, and then the word is that he'll come back and actually take his official at some point, it's usually pretty good news, and this continues to be pretty positive news for Oklahoma on that side of the football.
Yeah, I think, you look at some of the predictions coming in from guys that really know the Midwest well, Steve Wiltfong, Alan Trieu, those guys they're pretty locked in. So for them to be starting to make some predictions based on this visit this weekend, and I spoke to Reggie's father, it sounds like it all went well. Like they really were impressed. Oklahoma, because they didn't leave until this morning. So there was, it was kind of like an official visit that they just happened to pay for, because it was about 48 hours in Norman. He had a game Friday night. I think he told me they had to get up at like 3:00 in the morning on Saturday to go catch their flight in Ohio and then fly down to Norman. So it was, and that kind of puts into perspective why these 11 a.m. kicks are so difficult for guys. And, and Oklahoma was hoping they would take that opportunity. Now he's going to come down in a couple of weeks on November 11th. I can't remember who they're playing that particular weekend.
West Virginia.
West Virginia.
Yeah, yeah. So they'll be back down then, and his mother will come with him that time. And I think that could be, you could see something happen that weekend, because there was some thought that when Boganowski committed, it might close the door on Reggie Powers. Talking to some people, I think Oklahoma, we're again, and I, want to tout my shirt here a little bit, because there was a different time when I thought Oklahoma was always very conservative in their numbers game. That's not what I'm getting from Brent Venables. Like, if you're good enough and they kind of see you as this is where the line is and you're above it, they're going to find a way to get you on that roster. That's what they want to do.
Josh, looking at it, he would be, depending on how you want to classify each of these players where they're going to play, it'd be 4 safeties when you talk about Jaden Hardy, Michael Patterson McDonald, Michael Boganowski, who's listed as a linebacker on 3, maybe plays Cheetah, whatever, and then Reggie Powers. Is that kind of shocking to you at all that they might take 4 safeties? I mean, again, it depends on where these guys end up actually playing. Maybe a couple of them move around, but is that surprising at all that they take 4?
It is a little bit. I mean, because it's not like they had a small class last year when you look at Peyton Bowen, Day McCullough, and Eric McCarty. I mean, like that's a big group. And then you throw in guys like Jacoby Johnson, who clearly is seen as a corner right now, but he's so big, like he could easily end up as a safety. You could buy that as a possibility. So they've got really good numbers in the secondary, but if they're laying Reggie Powers, they're landing 7 defensive backs a year after signing 6, and 7 if you include Kendall Dolby. So, I mean, that's 14 DBs in 2 years. That's obviously not going to keep, and that's not what they're going to do. But also, when you look at what's in front of them, I mean, in the junior class at corner and safety, you have Kendall Dolby and Billy Bowman, and that's it. And then the sophomore class, it's Kenai Walker, Gentry Williams, and Robert Spears Jennings, and that's it. Like, there's not a lot remaining in 2024. So I think they're just trying to almost, a survival of the fittest kind of scenario, and they're putting as much talent as they can in those 2 rooms.
There's no doubt. It's going to be interesting to see how all of this kind of wraps up. So that is going to do it for your recruiting report. I know that we were going to hit on some team stuff. Josh, appreciate you joining us on the Eskridge Lexus postgame show. We have the Monday Morning Idiot underway on the Crimson Corner. Just real quick, before we let you go and before we wrap this up, anything stuck out to you maybe in the rewatch that you didn't think of on Saturday night when we were doing the postgame show? Or, just in terms of like an R. Mason Thomas, I know that it seems like he's starting to flash a little bit more for that defensive end group. And, there's going to obviously be some things that they need to shore up here over the next 5 weeks if they want to remain unbeaten.
I would say of the 2 things that really stick out to me that I probably was wrong about my initial reaction, R. Mason Thomas is one of them. And it's not so much that I didn't think he played well. I just didn't get eyes on him as much as I would have liked to. And you're seeing him flash, like just little bits. And the thing is, like, we all know how explosive he can be when he's healthy. But I saw it like him, like fighting back blockers and like winning some stuff in the run game. And you're like, okay, that's, because if he can do more of that, they can leave him out there. And instead of like, oh, we got to get him out there in pass situations. The other I would say is I was very tough on Caleb Schaefer, and watching it, something happened late in the first half, and I don't know what it was. I don't have any explanation for it. He played fairly well in the first half. He was okay. He wasn't great by any stretch, but he was okay. And then you watch him early in the second half, and he's not moving the same. And I don't have an explanation for what that is, but something's wrong. I don't know if somebody like stepped on him or he rolled an ankle or something. But something in his lower body doesn't look right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about that.
It was on the Nick Anderson second touchdown that something happens, because he was down on the field for a while, and I think, George, that's when McCade Matower went in on the extra point.
I want to say they taped up his ankle, or maybe it was his foot, but there was some extra tape around that one foot. So I think that's what happened.
And just quickly, it doesn't matter. It's not what we're talking about. McCade Matower is a tough guy. Oh, Good Lord. Just to roll out like that, that's impressive.
Well, it's going to be interesting. Oklahoma headed to Kansas this weekend, looking to improve to 8-0, 11 a.m. kickoff. Lovely, a big noon kickoff. Oklahoma did get put on a 6-day window for the Bedlam kickoff, so we will find that out probably late Saturday night or early on Sunday when the final installment of Bedlam will be for the foreseeable future. So it's going to be a fun week. I think that, the Kansas stuff with the Jalen Daniels, I think storyline. Josh, just on Monday, I know that Lance Leopold talked about it on Monday, I guess mid-morning. They're not ruling him out, Jalen Daniels, but I think Jason Bean's going to be the guy that takes the first snaps come Saturday morning.
Again, Eddie, you guys get to renew, old feelings.
It'll be
you guys
great.
get to talk a little bit in the pregame, catch up. So it's going to be beautiful. But yeah, I get why Lance Leipold wouldn't rule him out. You don't want to give OU anything. You want them to have to worry about him. I hate to say it, but I feel like we're getting the picture here. The back stuff, I can't remember a 20-year-old in college football having back spasms and stuff like this for
repeatedly
6 weeks. Like that doesn't sound right.
It's weird. I don't know what else to think other than I think what a lot of people kind of feel on this generally is that maybe he's headed into the transfer portal at some point, maybe overtaking somebody's rent in Los Angeles that could be headed to the NFL, if you catch my drift. So I haven't hated the discourse over the last couple of days, the last 48 hours. I know we talked about it a little bit on the postgame show, but it was quite fun when we got out of here on Saturday evening to see the events in Los Angeles. I do think it's funny, and this is a conversation for the unofficial 40. I know we're wrapping up, but it is funny to me that people that are like, oh, the LA media are really coming down on Lincoln. I think it's different than what we had seen when you're in the middle of it and you thought, okay, maybe he's learned from this. Maybe he's learned to care about the defensive side of the football. That's why he's getting the criticism that he is. I don't know. The Stuart Mandels of the world, the little people of the world like that, just they tend to bug me. But like I said at the beginning, we pray for Matt Leinart. We pray for people like O.J. Simpson. What? Maybe not. Josh, we appreciate it. Thanks for joining us today. This has been a recruiting report. George and I will be back on Tuesday following the Brent Venables press conference and a little bit of a practice report from Monday night and Tuesday as Oklahoma heads in to Kansas week. So for Josh, for George, I'm Eddie. We will talk to you right back here on the Soonerscoop.com YouTube channel.